President Biden has told pro-Palestinian demonstrators they have the right to freedom of speech, but not to cause chaos. He was speaking in the last hour in a TV address after police in Los Angeles cleared a protest camp at the University of California. Joe Biden said the rule of law had to be respected by those who oppose the war in Gaza. Well, these were the scenes overnight during the police operation. Hundreds of officers in riot gear descended on the camp. There were loud bangs and thick smoke as police fired flares and stun grenades. Dozens of students have been detained. Demonstrations against the war in Gaza are continuing at dozens of universities right across the United States. The president warned there was no place for violence, racism or hate speech in the country, including on student campuses.
In fact, peaceful protest is in the best tradition of how Americans respond to consequential issues. But neither are we a lawless country. We are a civil society, and order must prevail. Throughout our history, we've often faced moments like this because we are a big, diverse, free-thinking, and freedom-loving nation. In moments like this, there are always those who rush in to score political points. But this isn't a moment for politics. It's a moment for clarity. So let me be clear. Peaceful protest in America. Violent protest is not protected. Peaceful protest is. It's against the law when violence occurs. Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not peaceful protest. It's against the law. Dissent is essential to democracy, but dissent must never lead to disorder or to denying the rights of others so students can finish the semester and their college education.
That was Joe Biden speaking from the White House, as say, in the last hour. We'll talk to our correspondent Nomia Iqbal in a moment or two. But let's speak first to Dolores Quintana, a reporter at the Santa Monica Mirror, who was covering the UCLA protests. Welcome, Dolores, to the programme. Give me an idea, first of all, I know you were there overnight, what it was like.
Hi. Yes, I have to say that last night, and yes, I was there all night until they started clearing the camp. And then I had to leave because they were telling people that they would be arrested. It was a lot calmer than it was the previous night. The previous night was very frightening. I'll be very honest. Even as a reporter, none of us are safe.
Now, I spoke to a Democratic strategist a little earlier on the programme who talked about anarchists at many of these protests. You were there. Just give me your assessment of those people in the encampment there at UCLA.
Well, the people at the encampment and who are students, they actually are very nice. They're very smart. They're very organized. Would I call them wild anarchists? Not at all. As a matter of fact, they had a media check-in at their camp from the very first day. So they recognized the importance of, being able to talk to the media in a rational and engaging way. I think there may be a thought that somehow the violence that happened last night was the fault of the protesters who were students, and it absolutely was not.
We were listening to Joe Biden only a short time ago. He concluded that news conference saying there'd be no change in his administration's policy. Do you think there is any chance of a change in the university's policy? These protesters have been demanding that the universities divest from links with Israel. Do you get any sense there's any movement in the universities on that key demand?
I think that because of the violence that happened, that they're going to have to do an investigation, because the UC police stood by and did nothing when reporters were being assaulted, when the students of the school were being assaulted by people who clearly did not go to UCLA. I think it might be a slow process, but I also think that these students aren't going to give up. And even though the encampment has been taken down, I wouldn't count them out.
Well, that's exactly my final question. I was going to ask you for your sense of whether this is the end of the protests or just a pause. Do you get the sense that those protesters will be back? And are those police likely to stay in largish numbers on site on campus?
Well, I think maybe in the coming days. Right now, UCLA's campus is actually shut down for Thursday and Friday. They're only doing remote classes, and they've told students to stay away from Royce Quad. I believe 132 students were arrested, according to ABC News, which is a fraction of the people who are actually in the encampment, in my belief. The population was kind of liquid. But I don't think that's even half of the people who are actually there. So I think that this may be a summer of protest in the United States to try and get colleges to divest from, in particular, BlackRock, which is a private equity company.
Yes.
That the students believe basically are contributing, their money is contributing to the war in Palestine and Gaza.
Dolores Quintana, I have to leave it there. Sorry to cut across you, but thank you so much for giving us that assessment there of those events overnight at UCLA and perhaps what we're likely to see in the coming weeks. Let's turn to our correspondent, Naomi Iqbal, our North America correspondent. She's in New York. Of course, we saw those protests at Columbia University about 36 hours ago. And Naomi, you were listening to the president. What was your assessment of what we heard from Joe Biden?
Well, I think there was some pressure on President Biden to speak out. The last time we'd heard from him was April the 22nd about the campus protests, and many had felt that his comments were pretty vague, but he's trying to strike a balance. He said that students had the right to peaceful protest, but it was about the unlawfulness, the unlawful nature of some of the protests. So just looking, obviously made some notes about what he said. He said that people have the right to protest but not cause chaos. His point is dissent, not disorder. And we understand a senior White House official had said that the president wanted to speak out this morning, given what's happened and given the number of violent incidents over the past 48 hours. We've seen all those tents being cleared from UCLA. We've seen those scenes of violence on the West Coast. There's been more than 1,000 arrests as well so far. But for the president, it is complicated because there are dueling domestic and foreign policies here, which have sort of merged into one now. And he said at the end of the conference, at the end of the speech, that he wasn't going to change his policy in the Middle East. That's something also he's trying to balance as well. But I think there was pressure on him to say something. I'm not sure that he will have pleased both sides in what he said.
Briefly, Naomi, our previous guest spoke about she anticipates a summer of protests. That is potentially problematic for a president in the months leading up to a presidential election.
Yes, I think at best President Biden is hoping this fizzles away and that people forget. And when I do ask students, does this affect your vote? They don't want to be drawn into that. I think at worst it continues for President Biden. He's already pretty much heckled at a lot of events he goes to by pro-Palestinian supporters. But yes, it is. We're about 6 months away from the election. We'll have to see just how much this factors into young people's voting. Remember, he needs them on side. He wants to build a coalition of young voters to help him secure an election victory in November.
Naomi Iqbal, live for us there in New York. Thanks very much. Thank you.